Welcome to the Success is Subjective podcast series brought to you by collegealternative.org, presented by Lilley Consulting. I'm your host, Joanna Lilley. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Amanda Fialk. Now, Dr. Fialk is a partner and the chief clinical officer at The Dorm. Amanda received her master's degree and a doctoral degree both in social work. Her dissertation focused on the clinical implications of countertransference in the treatment of addiction. In addition to that, she completed psychoanalytic training at the Institute for Contemporary Psychotherapy in New York City. And prior to joining The Dorm in 2011, Amanda was the program director for the New York Center for Living and Flatbush Addiction Treatment Center. Amanda has specialized training in DBT, CBT, addiction and co-occurring disorders, eating disorders, family therapy, EMDR, and motivational interviewing. She is a member of the National Association of Social Workers and the New York Academy of Medicine, as well as an adjunct professor at her alma mater. Amanda believes that clients and her families need to be treated holistically from a strengths-based perspective. She has seen firsthand the healing power of the therapeutic alliance and as such practices from a relational context. Now, fun fact, Amanda was a competitive figure skater growing up and is a U.S. Figure Skating Association gold medalist. Amanda also loves all sports. However, she is a huge New York Rangers hockey fan and an avid CrossFitter. So let's not wait any longer. Here's Amanda. All right, Amanda, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to hear about, well, just get to chat, but also hear about your story because I don't feel like I am familiar with it. So I'm excited to hear. So let's just dive in. Why don't you actually tell the listeners, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were receiving from your immediate family, as well as kind of the larger community in which you were raised, about post-secondary education?
So I grew up in Westchester County in Scarsdale, New York. So very, an affluent town, very homogeneous town. And everybody went to college when they graduated. That was the message, that you graduate from high school and you don't just go to college, you go to the best possible college that you can get into. And, best meaning look at the rankings and all the different books that you can get at Barnes and Nobles and try to stay within the top, 20, 30, 40, 50. That was the goal. That was the message. And anybody that strayed from that path was considered troubled, a problem, like as if there was something wrong with them. So there was a lot of pressure. And I think that, and a lot of competition, a lot of comparing yourself to how others were presenting themselves on the outside, because nobody really knew what was going on with one another on the inside. And, the pressure could feel certainly stifling at times. And everything that was done, I felt, at least in even starting in elementary school, going into middle school and then into high school, was in pursuit of this ultimate goal, which was to go directly to the best college, the highest ranked college as was possible. And that was what was the focus of your educational experience.
So then I have to ask, did you end up going to some high ranking school or what was your path? Because I also, the judgment around, like the messaging that you were receiving, right? That languaging the narrative that if you're not going to one of these schools, there's something wrong with you. Like saying that, hearing that is so shaming. So I'm just curious, what did you end up doing?
Yeah, it is extraordinarily shaming. So I did go to a top ranked college. I went to Colgate, which is a great liberal arts school. But my story doesn't end there. I think that's really where the story starts. I was a person who school kind of came easily to. I could do what I needed to get the good grades, to score the way that I needed to score on the SATs. And so that worked for my brain. What I did not learn, because it wasn't taught in elementary school, middle school, high school, was how to be a healthy social, emotional human being. So while you could look at my GPA and my SAT scores and say, according to the standards that our community judged one another on, that I was great, I was performing very well, but inside I was in pain and I didn't have the skills necessary to navigate some of the emotional pain that I was in, because I was never taught those skills. And they are skills, I believe, that just like any other skill can be taught and practiced and honed and mastered to the best of your ability over time, but I was never given that opportunity. So when I arrived at college, I was certainly prepared to thrive academically, which I did in college, but I was terribly ill-equipped to thrive socially and emotionally in college. And that led to a very tumultuous college experience for me, scary at times. And at the end of the day, and I don't want to sound overly dramatic because it's just the truth, almost lethal, because I found substances and everything that I did not know how to navigate, because I was never taught how to navigate feelings, social situations, etc. Substances helped me to navigate, because I didn't have the skills. So I can get more into that if you're interested.
Yeah, just keep going with it. Fill us in on what that looked like.
Yeah. So, like any teenager, not any, I shouldn't say, like many adolescents, experimentation is part of my story. And I think it's a fine line where experimentation turns into misuse, abuse, dependence. And I certainly crossed that line in college. Again, I was very prepared to thrive academically in college, and I did thrive academically in college. I was very ill-equipped to thrive emotionally and socially. So all of the sort of internal struggles that I was dealing with in high school were still there, and they were still festering. And like a soda can, the lid was on, but it was getting like shaked. And in college, it kind of just exploded because I wasn't at home anymore. I had all this freedom, all this independence. So the scaffolding that was sort of keeping me contained in high school was no longer there. And I could just navigate the world as I saw fit. And that included using substances and drinking and using drugs. And as I know now, substance use disorder is a disease, and it's progressive. Left untreated, it gets worse over time, not better. And what was scary about my illness is that because I performed well in school, I slid under the radar. So even though I got a DWI or had to go to the emergency room because I fell and I smacked my head on a table at a fraternity party, my defense was always, what are you going to do? Kick me out of school? I have such and such GPA. Like, I'm fine. I just went a little overboard. And everybody was sort of satisfied with that excuse, because on the outside, again, according to the standards that we tend to measure people up against, everything was fine. But by the end of college, I was waking up every morning and starting my morning with marijuana, alcohol, and some combination of pills, and maintaining that sort of cocktail through the day. And then the evening would happen. It was time to go out, and then it would repeat. And I started my day that way because I had to, because I was experiencing what I now know, didn't then know, were withdrawal symptoms. And by the time that I had graduated college, I was no longer using to have fun and to party with my friends. I was using just to survive. I mean, it was survival. My body needed it. And yeah, I graduated. I was never asked to take a leave. it was definitely highly suggested after my second DWI that I go to an outpatient program over like a holiday break or something like that. I mean, nothing terribly that I felt was, terribly overwhelming. I could just do it and go back to life as usual. So I graduated college heavily addicted to multiple substances. And again, I left college academically in a place that looked very good on paper. And I would say socially and emotionally, I was even more damaged than I was having had gone into college. So not only was I not learning those skills in college, I left college in more pain than I entered college. Completely unprepared to go into the real world and get a job. So I thought, let me just, take another standardized test and go back to school, because school is sort of where I can hide. And I did. I went to law school, but midway through law school, maintaining the addiction was just, it was no longer something that I could maintain. My body was literally giving out on me, to the point where some of my friends had called my family and said, listen, this is bad. Amanda is not in a good place right now, and she needs help. And my father, came into the city. New York City was where I was living when I was in law school, and, took me back to his house. And at that point in time, I knew that I couldn't really go on much longer like that. So I said I was ready to get some help for real, and got everything set up to go away to rehab. And I was supposed to leave the next day. And for the first time in probably 5 years, because all throughout college and that first year of law school, I was using on a daily basis, I didn't have access to substances. I was at my dad's house, and there was nothing there, and I didn't have anything with me. And what ended up happening is I had a seizure, and I went into cardiac and respiratory arrest. And my dad's a doctor, so he was able to perform CPR, get me breathing again. I was rushed to an emergency room, and I woke up and I just said, I don't want to die. So whatever it is that I need to do to get healthy, just tell me and I'll do it. And that's, where part 2 of the story begins. But when I think back over my high school experience, my college experience, and this isn't to blame anybody, it's systemically, I think that there's flaws in the educational system, and society, the values that where we place our values, where we choose for our resources to go, because there are limited resources, right? And you see it all the time. I have a child now in school, and everybody wants the resources to go to more of this class, or more of this enrichment activity, or more AP classes, versus how about more school counselors? How about more social emotional curriculum? And, how are we missing that when we're sending 18-year-olds, you're 18 when you go to college, 18-year-olds to live on their own without any independent living skills? We're so focused on the academic, that we send 18-year-olds away completely ill-equipped to live independently in a way that's healthy. And it feels just very, very rushed. I did not know who I was at 18. I had no idea who I was. And I remember sitting with my advisor and needing to pick a major. I don't know what I want to major in. What's the easiest major? But these are the big life decisions that we're placing in front of 18-year-olds without giving them the skills to make those decisions, or this time to figure out who they are. So, yeah.
I think the picture that you painted, right, of the soda pop, the can, we're shaking it up, but we're making sure that we're not opening it. So it's we know what's going to happen, right? As soon as you crack that lid, it's going to explode. And that's honestly the generation of young people that we have right now that are going into college. Not only are they put under so much pressure academically to meet certain standards or criteria to get into, insert name of elite institution, they have no idea what they want to do when they get there, or how to handle the stress once they get there, because it's just been on this like pressure cooker of a pipeline since in utero. Let's be real. Like it starts earlier and earlier. But I so appreciate you sharing that story, because I also think the other thing that I just wanted to highlight as you're talking, depending on where people grow up, right? If that pressure system exists as intensely as it did for you, there's more pressure to put on the mask that I'm okay. Yeah. Right? Like you said, like, look, I'm doing well in the classroom. Like that's enough. And oftentimes, because we have stigmatized mental health so much, right? That social emotional learning, then it allows people to just say, okay, you're fine, right? You're still doing well in school. Like just, I don't want to say pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but rather like get it together. Right. I just like this other stuff that's kind of oozing out, like sweep that back under the rug. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, here you are at this pivotal point, having a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, your dad is trained and like able to save you. And you're at this vulnerable point where you're saying, I don't want to die. Like, what do I need to do to like actually live my life? Mm-hmm. What happens next?
So I went to rehab, and I had the gift of desperation. And it was a gift of desperation because I was that person who did whatever I was told and asked to do because I didn't want to die. I was so scared at that point. And I took rehab really, really seriously. And I took my recovery really seriously. At that point in time, I was 22 years old. So I was young, but I was scared. I was so scared. And I stayed in rehab for about 90 days. And I remember at the end of the 90 days, I said, I don't think I should go back to New York City yet. I think I need a little more time away. So after leaving rehab, I went to like a secondary program that was a little bit less intense. It was just a magical experience. Actually, I got to, go on hikes. I got to see Bill W.'s log cabin, work on my steps, met fantastic people, met like-minded young people like myself. And after about 2 months there, I said, okay, I'm ready to go back to the city. But the question then was, now what, right? Because I was, for the first time in my life, really just beginning to figure out, like, who am I? What is my purpose? What brings me joy in life? Who is Amanda? What is her authentic self? And because I knew that these questions were not going to be answered overnight. It was going to be a journey to answer a lot of these questions. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had the strength and the support to say, you know what? Screw the 4-8-year plan that I'm supposed to be on, because you are supposed to be on a plan, right? You graduate college, and then you either work in, at some bank, or you go to law school or med school, but like there is a plan post high school, post college. And I said, screw it. That plan it's just not where I'm at right now. And I need more time, and I need to figure out a plan that works for me. So I'm grateful that my family really supported me in that. They didn't pressure me to go back to law school, because I didn't know if I wanted to go back to law school. I only went to law school because I didn't want to be in the real world. I just felt like it was easier to hide in school. So I took the next year and a half to just explore who I was. I was living in the city. I got a job waiting tables. I specifically would request graveyard shifts, which were midnight till 8 a.m. because I felt like, okay, that's really safe. If I'm working during those times, I'm not going to be tempted to be out during those times. I went to a ton of 12-step meetings, met some fantastic people, had a really solid friend group, did a lot of service within the 12-step community, which was so fulfilling for me. And I also did a lot of volunteer work. And part of my volunteering was going back to my rehab, and I would spend time on the adolescent unit. When I was in rehab, I was 22, so I was too old to be with the teenagers, but I was also a little bit young. I was definitely on the younger side of the adults. And I went back and I would, once a week, just hang out with the teenagers and share my experience, strength, and hope. And I know so much more out of doing service than they probably got out of me babbling. It was so fulfilling and special and magical. And after spending time doing it, I just realized, you know what? This is what brings me joy and happiness. Connecting with other young people, trying to help other young people who are suffering and in pain. And I started thinking about, how maybe this was my life's purpose. This is why I was put on this earth. And this is why I had to go through everything that I went through, because it enabled me to have a unique understanding of what it's like to be young and in pain and needing help, but not knowing how to ask for help, but kind of wanting help, but kind of not wanting help, and all those mixed feelings that you have when you're a teenager and you know that there's something not right inside, but you don't really want to admit that. So I decided to just take a class, non-matriculating at a social work school, took the class, loved it, and then decided to apply to school about 2 years into my sobriety. And the rest is sort of, ancient history. Fast forward, 21 years, and I've gotten to co-create a program specifically for young people who need a safe space to go to get help, and who feel a lot of shame for not subscribing or fitting into that 4-year, 8-year, 12-year plan that that family and community sort of pushes upon them.
And just so we can do the true shameless plug, what is the program that you got to co-create, and where is it? Mm-hmm. And then we'll get to it at the end of the show, how folks can actually connect with you. But I want to just hear what, the specifics.
Yeah. So the Dorm is the program that I got to co-create, and we are located in New York City and Washington, D.C. And what's really wonderful and what spoke to me in the beginning stages of the Dorm is that there was a real opportunity to create something unique and something that I didn't have. I had, and I'm very grateful, because way too many people don't have access to quality treatment. And I did. My family had the resources. However, at the time that I did treatment, there wasn't much young adult specific treatment. So as I shared earlier, I was too old to be with the 16-year-olds, but I was 22. And I remember most of my roommates in rehab were, to me at the time, I'm now 44, but my roommates then were 44 and felt like ancient to me. They were 44, 50. Which I was lucky, because I was so scared and desperate that I wasn't looking for reasons for this not to work. But, for a 22-year-old who might be more ambivalent, you throw them into a program with a bunch of 40-year-olds and, immediately, well, this is why it's not going to work. I can't relate to these people. So creating a program that specifically targeted the young adult population, because I do think that it is such a unique stage in the developmental life cycle. And it's a really tricky stage. We talk so much about adolescence, and yes, adolescence is tricky. And so is young adulthood. In some ways it's trickier, because you're expected to, using in quotes, launch, whatever that term means, because I feel like that's a really culturally insensitive term as well, because not all cultures want children to launch. But it's a really, that college age cohort, especially kids that shouldn't be going to college right away, need or that need to take a leave from school and need to get help, that they needed a program specifically for them where they could meet their people. They could see that they are not the only 22-year-old in the world that's no longer going to be smoking pot. They are not the only 22-year-old in the world who struggles with, severe anxiety or an eating disorder or depression. Getting to create a program that, of course, had individual therapy and group therapy, but also had such a strong emphasis on community. Because for me, I was scared enough to get sober, but staying sober is a whole different ballgame. And if I had not met my people in 12-step rooms and young people's AA meetings, I don't know if staying sober would have felt sustainable. Even having had a near life and death, experience, I needed to have a group of other 20-something-year-olds who I could have fun with. I wasn't getting sober to be miserable. Like, I still wanted to be 20 years old and, live the life of a 20-year-old. And at the dorm, we really wanted to create that community environment where young people could come and hang out and play pool and jam in the different instruments and put the projector on the TV and watch a movie together, and really emphasize that, to me, I don't know that the opposite of addiction is recovery. I really think it's connection and being able to connect with others, whether you're struggling with a substance use disorder or a mental health concern, having a place to connect and really, really creating that special environment in an urban setting. Because for me, when I left rehab, as much as I love the woods, I did not feel like I wanted to stay in the woods forever. So how do we create safe spaces in urban environments where people can maintain support and maintain their recoveries and also get treatment that is intensive and comprehensive? Because not all 20-something-year-olds want to stay in the woods.
So I'm going to ask you this question as a follow-up because I think the timing is perfect. Do you see yourself, like, having heard your journey, kind of sharing it through this process leading up to what you have since created, do you see yourself as successful?
I will say yes, but I want to define it I don't know. It depends on how you want to define the word success. I consider myself to be very successful because I have figured out a way to live my life that is congruent and supportive of my authentic self. And I have found my purpose and my passion in life. And to me, that is success.
Okay, so as a follow-up, if you could give one piece of advice I almost feel like we could make it specific or we can make it broad, right? Like Amanda, circa 19 years old, like high functioning, on the outside, you've got it together, but on the inside, like the writing's on the wall that the implosion is about to happen. What advice would you give that young person right now?
Yes. You don't have to wait for the elevator to come crashing to the basement before you get off. And asking for help and taking the path less traveled is courageous and brave, and you'll always end up just where you need to be if you do that.
So I think, there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this story. And I think what's so important about the dorm, you hit the nail on the head. What differentiates you from a lot of other types of continuums of care is that you're in an urban environment. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's so often that young people are asking me like, but can't I be in the city? And oftentimes like there's a lot of reservation. Mm-hmm. Can you, is being in a big city going to be too overstimulating? Is it going to be too much? Is it going to be too triggering, et cetera? But in an effort for folks to just connect with you, having heard your story, knowing what you've created, and then also just being able to kind of honestly reach out and express gratitude for you to vulnerably share your story, honestly. How do people connect with you?
I love receiving emails. I work with young people, so I am pretty much attached to my phone because I'm constantly getting emails and text messages. So please, if you want to connect, always feel free to email me at afialk@thedorm.com, afialk@thedorm.com. I would love to hear from you in that way.
And we'll make sure that we have all the social media links for the dorm so that folks can actually just click right in the show notes to access the website, as well as check out Instagram and any of the other social handles that are listed. So Amanda, thanks again for taking the time to share your story. I really appreciate. Again, there's going to be at least one person that really, really resonates with you sharing this story, and they're going to reach out to you, like I said, to connect, because to your point, the opposite of addiction is connection. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this show on these important topics.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. I want to thank my guests for joining me on this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it wasn't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for the next episode where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guests. And also put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email me at Joanna, Joanna, at successissubjective.org. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please do me a favor and subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to Success is Subjective on any other popular podcast apps such as Amazon, Audible, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. And last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener supported, made possible by me and by you. You can show support for the continuation of this podcast by donating on the successissubjective.org website. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.